Am I the jerk for wanting nothing to do with my sister's baby? Long story, so my apologies. Basically, my mother met my stepfather and he took me on as his own. They then had my sister, Anna, a year later. My mother died, and my stepfather kept me as his daughter and then remarried Beth when my sister was 2 years old. Beth hated me because I was not my father's biological child, and I looked a lot like my mother. She eventually talked my father into kicking me out of the house in my mid-teens, and I went to live with my father's sister and her wife before I went off to college. 10 years later, I am married and have 2 children. When I was pregnant with my first child, Anna was super excited to be an auntie. She came to my baby shower and everything. However, once my daughter was born, she never visited. I offered to go to her, meet her halfway, go do something like a coffee date or beach day, but she was always busy. The same thing happened with my second daughter. Anna was a no-show. We messaged all the time, but when I invited her for birthdays or weekends, she would say she was coming and then just not show up. Fast forward, my children are 8 and 9 years old, and I've never met their aunt. They do not know anything about her. We have not exchanged texts for about 5 years now because I stopped reaching out after she kept blowing us off. My sister had her baby 4 months ago, which I found out via Facebook. I did not message her because I thought she did not want anything to do with my kids, so why should I bother with hers? I borrowed something from my father's sister and went to drop it off the other day while the kids were at school. My father, Anna, and Beth were there with Anna's baby. I tried to just leave, but Anna cornered me about not congratulating her about the baby or asking how she was doing. I responded, "Why would I? You didn't do it for my kids." She blew up at me, calling me selfish. I yelled back, "I don't make a habit of asking after strangers' babies, and that's what you are to me." My father said that we were sisters and family is supposed to be there for each other. I am ashamed to admit I lost my temper with him and called him a cold-hearted bastard. I asked who he was to talk to me about family while wearing his No One Grandpa shirt when he had grandchildren he had never acknowledged. Where I am probably the asshole is that this all happened in my aunt's house and in front of Anna's baby, who was sleeping at the time. It is not ideal to be screaming in front of an infant. My aunt thinks I was in the right, and it was a long time coming, but her wife thinks I could have used this as an opportunity to reconnect, as maybe now Anna is mature enough to have a relationship with me and my kids. So, am I the asshole? Nothing you have done here makes me think you are the jerk here. She never wanted a relationship and made no effort to keep in touch or meet your kids, so it's all on her. It's not your responsibility to maintain a relationship if she can't reciprocate. Your dad deserved what you said. He doesn't get to preach about family when he forced you to leave because it was inconvenient for him. Am I the jerk for expecting my grieving friend to still apologize? My closest friend, let's call her M, and I have an incredibly close and supportive, but also toxic friendship. 4 years ago, during the pandemic, M's brother died unexpectedly at 26. About 4 months after his death, M, our 2 mutual friends, and I went on a trip. M was trying to take her mind off things, but it could be argued it was too early, especially when group trips can be riddled with conflict. One day during the trip, M told me our other friends and she had changed their minds about something I planned and everyone agreed to. I got upset and vented that frustration. M started breaking down emotionally, saying, "I can't believe you're fighting with me right now. You know I just lost my brother," I replied. "Of course, your feelings always matter more than mine." I truly regret saying that and apologized profusely because even if it were true, it was not the time or place to say it. But it is important to note that M has a history of anxiety, depression, and PMDD that has been a trigger for many of our past fights. So my emotions have taken a backseat for nearly a decade. Flash forward to just 2 months ago. After a particularly bad series of arguments, I wrote a long text to M telling her I feel like we need a good break because I feel taken for granted and mistreated. M took accountability, apologized, and agreed to take a break for an unspecified amount of time. Recently, M called me in the middle of a workday. She told me her father had just been diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma. I called off the break to try and be there for M during this very taxing and scary point in her life. Unfortunately, the fighting crept back before long. Only a week later, we got into another fight. M accused a friend of mine of dramatizing her fatigue issues, which I guess M didn't think I would question her for saying, even though she knows I hate when people minimize how difficult dealing with extreme fatigue can be. I've talked extensively about how much it's affected my life. I was offended and told M that. She argued with me a bit and ended up, like previous times, breaking down and asking me where my compassion is and how I could think it's worth getting into these fights with a close friend when I know how dark and overwhelming things are for her, and she really needs support and positivity. I apologized once again and assured her that I didn't think asking those questions about the faking fatigue issue would lead to a fight. I wasn't yelling at all. I was totally calm but still pushing the issue and figured maybe she would apologize and there wouldn't even be a fight. I don't want to push any further with all her trauma and her dad's cancer, so I've resigned myself to just shoving down my feelings toward anything she may say that upsets or offends me so I can try to be there for her with no arguing. But I find myself questioning if her expectations are reasonable. Don't spare my feelings. I genuinely want to know, am I the asshole? It sounds like you're close to being done with the toxicity, and that's okay. You don't owe her anything, and if this friendship has become unhealthy, you have every right to decide it's not for you anymore. There will always be something about the season she's in that will make her behave like this when you don't say what she wants to hear. It's okay to cut people out of your life, especially if being her friend isn't beneficial to you. Am I the jerk for not allowing our child to see their grandparent often? I met my husband a few years ago, and when we initially met, I loved his mom. She told me about herself, and much of what she said resonated with me, so I thought it was cool we were so similar. I would talk to her almost every day, and when I did, I noticed some of her storylines changed. I noticed that pretty much no one in the family had any contact with his mom. She moved to Canada randomly. I met my husband online, and we ended up meeting only because his mom lived in the same city as me. My husband told me that their mom was not in the picture much when they were children, but after a while I got the full story and found out they were completely neglected and put in horrible situations as kids. She kidnapped them, his brother, and she was pregnant with him, and took them away from their dad. My husband had never met his dad before and just knew he was Canadian. She ran away to be with another man, with whom she had another child. When we were dating, I helped him find his biological dad, and he was a great guy. His mom was constantly telling us how abusive and crazy he was. It did not seem right because she also told us multiple times how much she loved him and wanted to be with him again. Since she ran away, he found a new wife, and they have been together for over 25 years and are such amazing people. She gets really annoyed when we see them and do not invite her, but the dad seems too traumatized to be in the same room. My husband had a lot of resentment towards his mom because she put them up for adoption after she had their half-sister to be with another man in another state. Her parents took all three of them so they could stay together rather than be in separate families. Prior to that, any sort of child support she was getting was never going to the kids. She only seemed to care about herself. After she left that guy, she moved to Canada again and tried to build a relationship with her now adult children. My husband hated her and did not talk to her for years until he finally did. He is really scared of abandonment and is very gullible when it comes to her. Almost everything she initially told me was a lie because she forgot her own lies and changed the story. We have a baby now, and I refuse to see her more than once a month because I am worried she will do the same thing or something else with her. She also has Munchausen syndrome. I want my husband to have a relationship with her if he wants, and would never tell him not to. I am just worried for him since she pretends nothing ever happened and claims to be the person who raised them. I do not want him to resent me for making our child not be close to her grandma, but I really just do not like her and do not think she is a good person. When I tried to justify it and build a relationship again with her, she continued to fabricate stories. There is much more to the story, but I think the biggest thing is that 90% of her own family pretty much hates her and will not communicate with her. Am I the asshole? I would now or try it. In my opinion, you have done nothing wrong here. Keep the child safe both physically and mentally. His mom sounds like a problem, so staying away is best. It's important that all interactions with the baby are supervised, and maybe the husband should consider therapy to work through his past experiences. Am I the jerk for asking my mother to stop taking photos of me before I leave the house? My mother and I, an 18-year-old female, have gotten into several arguments as I finished my senior year of high school. Now that it is summer, I am doing my last theater summer camp, and then I start work. My mother loves to take photos. Her camera roll contains easily over 50,000 images. While this does irritate me from time to time, I have never asked her to not take photos of me. I understand that she loves pictures and enjoys making scrapbooks. What really frustrates me is when she will stop me while I am walking out the door and ask for a photo. It happened when I was leaving for school on multiple occasions, and she has done it during the theater camp I mentioned earlier. Even when I tell her I'm running late, she will stop me before I leave the house and make me take a photo. Her excuse is always, "I love your outfit and want a photo." I have been having a hard time setting boundaries with my mother as I am about to go to college. My most recent attempt was last weekend. After we had a fun outing, I finally worked up the courage to ask her to stop. I waited until she was in a good mood and jokingly said, "You have got to stop taking photos of me before I leave. If I like my outfit, I have probably already taken a photo." She eventually agreed after telling me how much she likes taking photos of me because she thinks I look cute. The very next day, I was waiting for my friend to pick me up so we could go out, and my mother stopped me to take a picture. I let this incident go because I was wearing a pair of pants that I had finished crocheting. I had spent around 6 months working on the pants, so I understood why she wanted to take photos. I posed and let her take a few, then said I had to go. She proceeded to stop me the next morning before camp to take photos because I was wearing the pants again. I told her we took photos yesterday. She started to get upset, so I said, "I asked you nicely to stop doing this. You are disrespecting my request." I tend to cry when I get upset, so I was basically crying at this point. My mother was almost yelling at me, calling me selfish because she knows how much she loves photos. She walked out of the kitchen and slammed the door. She went 3 days without talking to me. This is not the first time she has given me the silent treatment, but this was the longest. The only time she spoke to me was to yell from down the stairs that I had to get up earlier because she would not be prepping any of my food. I really thought I was doing well setting a small boundary, but her reaction has made me very disappointed with the result. Was I asking about something silly and not worth arguing over? Am I the jerk for asking her to stop taking photos before I leave? Your mother's behavior seems almost compulsive at this point, as though she's trying to preserve every moment and every change. If you are leaving home soon, and if this behavior has only recently manifested, it could be coming from a place of anxiety. Still, her anxiety is not your responsibility, and it's completely okay for you to set any boundary you want regarding your own body likeness. The silent treatment in particular strikes me as both telling and vastly disproportionate. Am I the jerk for leaving my partner's family reunion without warning after he failed to tell me we were having professional family photos taken? Context. As you can imagine, this is not the first time he has failed to tell me pertinent information about the activity at hand. We have had countless conversations about discussing the details ahead of time. When similar situations have happened, he has completely failed to take accountability and instead blames me for being inflexible and controlling. Background. About 6 weeks ago, I had a major life change back home that has required me to travel 4 weekends in a row. This past Monday, I flew back from my home state and then traveled 4 hours round trip to a neighboring city on Thursday and Friday for a work training. When I arrived back on Friday, there was a safety situation at the office that required me to remain at work until 9:00 p.m. to have the locks changed. Essentially, I was absolutely exhausted by Friday night. Situation. My partner was able to leave Thursday evening for his family reunion at the lake, and we agreed that I would meet him there on Saturday. On Saturday, I made the 2-hour drive and arrived at the reunion around 1:30 p.m. About an hour into being there, I heard one of his cousins say that she has to get out and go get ready for dinner. I looked to my partner and asked, "We're going to dinner tonight?" Another cousin heard me and elaborated that we are also having professional family photos taken at dinner. Because we are at the lake, I had only packed athleisure wear and swimsuit cover-ups. I had no makeup, no hair tools, and nothing to wear. I also have long curly hair. Even a wash-and-go style takes planning because my hair stays wet for hours. His sister tried to reassure me, but literally no one wants to be unprepared for professional photos with their in-laws at a family reunion. I was simply unable to recover. I let him know that I had only packed one dress that is very obviously a swimsuit cover-up. In a group conversation with his family, he attempted to encourage me to wear that cover-up for the pictures. I left the dock and walked back to where we were staying. After taking a shower and sorting through my thoughts, I ultimately decided that I would not be attending dinner or pictures. At 4:30 p.m., his mom knocked on the door and let him know it was time to leave to make it on time for 5:00 p.m. pictures. I let him know I would not be going, and he immediately got upset with me and insinuated I was being unreasonable. In that moment, I privately decided I would be leaving the reunion altogether once he went to dinner. I waited for him to leave, packed my stuff, and drove back home. He was very upset with me and sent a text saying, "I am really hurt you left. We have not spoken since and are in a standoff about the whole thing." So, am I the asshole for leaving my partner's family reunion after he failed to prepare me for professional family photos? ETA. We have been together almost 4 years. We are not married, but our lives are fully integrated. He has a lovely family, and I have a good relationship with all of them. I packed essentials for the trip, like sunscreen, shampoo, and soap. If dinner and photos were not taking place, no one there would have worn makeup or styled their hair. It seems everyone has a different take on what lake weekend means, but for us, it means laid back and dressed down. Emphasis on casual. To everyone who has at least acknowledged my frustration, thank you. For the rest, there is no winning with a lot of the feedback. My options are either that I am a drama queen for leaving and therefore pretentious, self-absorbed, and overly concerned about my appearance, or that I should have packed makeup, hair tools, and a photo shoot-worthy outfit without knowing any of the plans to swim at the lake. You can see how this is impossible, right? I did not leave because I was worried about looking perfect in the pictures. I left because I did not feel respected by my partner. Expecting someone to take formal family photos in a swimsuit cover-up while everyone else is in their Sunday best is unrealistic. In my opinion, you have done nothing wrong here. His lack of communication is the issue. You've had countless conversations about discussing details ahead of time, so he knows it's important to you to be prepared. If you had stayed and gotten photographed in a swimsuit cover-up while the rest of the family was dressed up, it would have been even more uncomfortable and frustrating. Hopefully, his family realizes he blew it and lets him know, because he certainly did. Am I the jerk for not paying my friend to use their friend boss's beach house? I'm looking for some other perspectives on this issue because I am confused. My 25-year-old male birthday is coming up, and I have been looking for ways to celebrate with a few of my close friends. A few weeks ago, while brainstorming ideas, one of my friends, who I'll call Sam, a 30-year-old male, told me that he has been doing some gig work for a very wealthy man who has a large beach house in a town not too far from where we all live that he rarely uses. Sam offered to ask his friend or boss if we, along with 2 or 3 other friends, could use the beach house for a 5-day trip to celebrate my birthday. His boss agreed and didn't seem nervous or have any problem with it at all. Everything was fine until tonight. It is now 2 days before we were planning on leaving for the trip, and Sam called me. He told me that he had felt bad or guilty about using the beach house for free, so after he had taken care of his boss's dogs this past weekend, he told his boss not to worry about paying him. His boss normally would have paid him $450 for this. He essentially wanted to give him something in exchange for the use of his beach house, which I completely understand. However, he called me immediately after doing this to ask me if I and each of my friends could chip in $100, essentially to pay him back for the money he missed out on. I was confused. We had never discussed paying for the beach house, and I was under the impression that we would be able to use it free of charge. Sam told me that that was still the case, but he wanted to give his boss something back in return regardless because that's how friendships work. At this point, I began feeling a bit uncomfortable. This is really not a good time for my friends financially as they have major expenses that they have to take care of in the near future, and I know that they would not have agreed to come on the trip had they known that they would have to pay for the house. I don't feel comfortable asking them for the money. I also feel very uncomfortable with the fact that the money is not even going to the homeowners. It is going directly to Sam. I feel like he is asking me and my friends to pay him for watching his boss's dogs when I don't feel like that should be our responsibility or obligation. I would have been perfectly fine paying if we had discussed this beforehand. I wouldn't have minded giving his boss a few $100s for letting us use his beach house, but I just don't feel like it's right to be paying Sam directly. It is almost like he is trying to profit off of the situation, and it just isn't sitting right with me, especially since I am very generous with him. I am always making or buying him dinner, drinks, giving him gifts and furniture, etc. I just don't understand why he would expect me to pay him to use someone else's house. But maybe I'm not approaching this situation correctly. I would really appreciate another perspective on this. It's weird that Sam didn't ask in advance to make sure it would be okay. If Sam felt that his boss should have been paid for the use of his house, he was free to bring it up beforehand with everyone and then talk to the boss about it. Since the boss agreed to loan the house without payment, Sam should be okay with it too. Sam shouldn't expect others to chip in for money he himself decided to turn down. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.